Well, good morning. Good morning, Your Worship, councillors, and of course to members of the press and to our visitors this morning. Welcome to our Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting today, the 16th of September. We are also streaming live, so to those who are watching, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haramai. We do have the staff presentations will be up on the website, so for those who want to look and follow those, our website is www.rotorualc.nz. So there you are, fully covered. So good morning to you all. We do have a full agenda, so and I hope we can move smoothly through it this morning. We have apologies. Apologies, please, from Councillor Maxwell and Councillor Bentley. Thank you, Councillor Gould. May I have a seconder, please? Thank you, Councillor Kent. All those in favour that we receive the apologies, please say aye. Thank you.
Madam Chair, may I just mention that Councillor Maxwell is overseas in Vietnam with Rotorua doing a presentation on tourism for New Zealand.
Oh, thank you very much for that explanation. Thank you, Councillor Gould. Are there any declarations of interest? I think I perhaps should declare an interest in the presentation that's going to be done shortly on the Rotorua Library and Child Health Hub update. I am a member of the District Health Board, so I'm just going to put that on the table. Thank you very much, Councillor Stu. Thank you. Any urgent business? Yes, Councillor Gould.
Madam Chair, with Christchurch pulling out the election process for the electronic voting and also Hamilton, is this council going to get an update on whether we're going to proceed with the small number of councils which are left? And two, all of us got an email from Mr. Ray McCully last night. Are we going to get an update on that too?
Thank you. I understand that Councillor Hunt has already responded to that as the chair of our Inner City Revitalisation program. So thank you. So I think that suffices. That's sufficient at this stage. Thank you. As to the matter on the voting, electronic voting. We are going to have an update on that, but did you want to talk to that quickly now?
Yes, Madam Chair. Just I mentioned last meeting that actually Hamilton had not decided to proceed, and as I informed you at that time, there's two main providers that provide election services to most of the country. So Hamilton was being covered by one of the other providers, so that did not affect our group or our costings in any way. The decision around Christchurch is part of our group, and we've received an email from Elections NZ saying that it will not affect the price with the removal of Christchurch from the pilot.
Thank you. Councillor.
Just with regard to the proposal on online voting, with the territorial local authorities that were consulted, most of them conduct elections for other parties, i.e. the DHB and the regional councils, in all those areas that were named in your last report. Were they consulted in terms of an extra cost that might be imposed upon them before we were given the option or the consideration to go down that path?
AP?
Councillor, I can't speak for what other councils did. We did. Unfortunately, because of the decision about proceeding with the pilot was made quite late, our timing in informing our partners, the Regional Council and the DHB, was reasonably late notice, but they've responded positively to the request to be part of the trial with us. So we did have their support. They both did express their concerns that it was a reasonably quick decision and turnaround, but they did support it. And we've mentioned previously that because of the single transferable vote system for DHBs, there's certainly a hope that this may actually improve the voter response rate or turnout.
Thank you. I'll take one more question on that and then we'll move on to the agenda. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just to query whether in fact there is any actual factual evidence of electronic voting increasing voter turnout, because that's been disputed in a number of public forums just recently.
I think that might be their wish, but whether or not it's the reality, it's a good point what you're making.
I think that's probably one of the issues. That we've got some examples of what others have done overseas. I think the whole point of the trial was to see whether it would have an impact and whether the focus on it within New Zealand would actually change voter turnout. So there's certainly a desire to see a number of negative trends in voter turnout in our country over the last probably 10, 15 years. Hope is that that might be held or certainly turned around by going to electronic voting. That's part of this trial, and that's part of the opportunity and why they were trying to get a wide selection of councils across the country to give a pretty good picture about whether that would be achieved.
Thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence. Just one of the areas, JP, of concern that I've had since we made the decision, and pretty unanimously, the issue that's come before me has been security of and the integrity of the process, and I think the jury's out in terms of that. For me to now back and proceed down that path, I sincerely believe we need some assurances in terms of whoever the provider is, that those matters can almost be guaranteed, because we don't want anything that interferes in the integrity, especially when we're asking. That's the reason for my question earlier, Madam Chair, particularly when we're doing it on behalf of two other elected bodies. So I just hope that in bringing that back up to us, because you're going to have to report back in terms of some of the questions that Councillor Gould asked about the costings and things like that, I think that report will have to come back through
And there will be
operations and monitoring.
Yes, and there will be a report containing some of hopefully some of the answers to your queries. Thank you. 4.1 on our agenda: confirmation of the minutes. The minutes of the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee meeting held on the 5th of August. Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Thank you, Councillor Gould. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. 5.1, we have a presentation this morning on the Rotorua Library and Child Health Hub, an update by JP. And I'd like to welcome Ron, the Chief Executive of the Lakes, Ron Dunham, the Chief Executive of the Lakes District Health Board, and other members of your team. Ron, good morning. No mai hara mai. Thank you, JP.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With that sort of introduction, Madam Chair, maybe it's just worth asking Ron just to join us at the table, if that's at all possible, in case there's any questions as we proceed through. And I just wonder if Ron's able to introduce his team that's also here in support. Just for councillors, there's also the library manager here. Jane is in attendance in case there's any specific questions to the library manager as well as we go through the presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Ron, and welcome.
Thank you, Chair. I'd also like to introduce Bridget Nelson, who is our person from the District Health Board, who will be the manager of the centre when we get up and running. So she's involved in preparing that task now. And Gary Lees, who is our Director of Nursing. Gary and I are involved in working through the model of care, the way that we will utilise the facility. So we're doing quite a lot of work on that.
Councillors, what we've put down in front of you, and apologies to members of the public here, we haven't had enough copies to make available to the press or to the community members here, but what you've got in front of you is some of the concept plans that have been developed over the last month and a half. So as we proceed through the project, the first phase was really to undertake some workshops with staff in the DHB and also the library about how this centre could be operated and how the two separate groups can be work successfully in providing a whole service to our community. So those are the concept plans in front of you at this stage. Councillors, if you recall, the DHB had some funding approved for a centrally located child health team in one convenient location. So that was some funding provided through the Minister in 2014. We began conversations with the DHB shortly afterwards and really looked at the opportunities of how we could do something within the inner city. And that's where we arrived at the concept around the inner city. So it is actually an increase in the total square meterage of the building. So Council, we've reported to you previously that the library currently occupies about 4,400 square metres of the building. As you know, it's predominantly the library, with the top floor, however, being available to DRM and some other rented space. But ultimately the library is 4,400 square metres. Having said that, councillors, a lot of that space is taken up with a number of meeting rooms at both ends of the building, which are used sporadically, and certainly one of them has been used by council as its main sort of IT training area for some time as well. So 4,400 is not quite a realistic view of the total space available. So in this plan here you can see that what's being proposed is just over 3,100 square metres, so there is a reduction in that total floor space. However, there's also that share of the 1,200 square metres of shared space. So a sort of a minor impact on square meterage, but as I've tried to emphasise there, what we're trying to get here is a good utilisation of that space. So it's not about the square metres, it's about the effective use of that space. So that's what's being proposed in these concepts. Library shelving, there was some questions previously about, well, how do we get the library shelving to fit, and what does this do to the collection? What is shown before you in the concepts is a slight reduction in the number of library shelving units from 507 to 468, or 464. Again, that's reflective of making sure there's adequate space. So we could fit more units in, but what the designers have done, and it's been a discussion held with the library staff, is really to say there's plenty of opportunity for us to rationalise how we show and display the collection and how we sort of make sure it's up to date and current. So there is an opportunity there just to reduce that number of books on the shelves, just out of the need to keep that collection current and usable. So really what I'm emphasising in that last bullet point is what's being proposed here, and it's been a topic of discussion certainly for the library team, is how do we get the maximum usability out of the shared space and the library spaces being proposed. So the concept plans in front of you really just highlight how that will occur across the library building. So councillors, the other issue is obviously what happens around the library. This is an important centre, and we've talked about this being a child precinct or a child hub, and it's important that we make it as child friendly as possible and make sure the environment is accessible to everyone and effective for our current library users, whatever age they are, but also just for the community in the space as well. So obviously we've relocated the bus, one of the bus stops in the city to Arawa Street, so you can see there at the top of the picture 4 buses shown there, but also you can see there the proposal to enhance Jean Batten Park, and the key element here is probably the relocation within the concept of the main entrance of the library building to the centre. So I understand this is a return to how it used to be. So this is an important relocation of this, and certainly that means it's important to make sure we've got adequate drop-off spaces in Hope Upper Street, and also to make sure that calming is in place just to make this a very safe environment, and there'll be strong utilisation of the Hope Upper Street car parking for visitors to the library and also users of the child's health services within this space as well. Certainly there's some discussion about how this enhances the opportunities for the eyesight as well, so we're certainly talking to that team about the development proposals around the park here as well. So that's just the concept as it currently stands, councillors, and really trying to enhance that environment and really showing it as a child-friendly, community-friendly space that's accessible to the facility. So councillors, this is just some of the architectural images that have been included within the concepts. None of this is been seen specifically in the design, but it's certainly one of those things about this is the kind of stuff that could be developed within that. So none of this has been priced up or designed up at this stage, but this is just some of the ideas and concepts that were put forward within the document just to stimulate some of the thinking about what are the opportunities within that park space. Just as far as the building concept is concerned, councillors, this was just a look at how the architects in the concept had really seen the interface of the current library with Jean Batten Park. So as we've talked about, the entrance will now be in the centre. So this is probably a view from Hope Upper Street. So the main entrance will be in the centre. So importantly on that is that we provide some covered access from both the Arawa Street end, where the buses will be dropping people off, but also from Hope Upper Street, particularly for those who have mobility issues, to be able to get to that new entrance in the centre of the building under some sort of cover. So this is a view about a veranda. Again, the architects were trying to pick up on our wood first policy within that framework. Councillors, I've spoken previously about the extension and sort of the rebuilding of that top floor, so out to the edges, where DRM currently are tenants. So that's that widening out and sort of re-roofing of that area on the top floor out to the full width of the building. So again, that gives us the opportunity with that extension to consider whether it's appropriate to include wood first type options around that. But at this stage, obviously, this is just the concept. So the next phase, which is the more detailed design work, will enable us to drill into how it will actually look and what's the cost trade-offs of different elements within the proposed designs. So again, just some more artist's impression internally. Councillors, this just shows what the architects have seen from the central entranceway, which would be off to the left-hand side of this picture, and a sort of a shared library and bestsellers. At this stage they sort of still had a sort of a cafe window at one end, but the sort of central information reception desk with access to the elevators or new elevators up through the centre of the building, providing access to all floors. So again, that's just part of that concept initially. Councillors are aware that's obviously the mezzanine sits off to the right hand side on here, and we're probably standing, if we were in the current library, quite close to the stairs that go up to that mezzanine, if that helps orientate you. Again, councillors, here's just some images of some of the things that have been undertaken, some other libraries around the country or certainly around the world, and certainly for us it's an important element of seeing what you can do around wood first and the quite special design opportunities within the library space. You can see, for example, up in this top right hand corner, this sort of snug area within a library environment gives the opportunity for children to sit up here and feel a sense of intimacy in that sort of space, but equally could work as a small stage within the library. So again, it's bringing into those different uses within the library environment as well. So again, all conceptual at this stage. We need to work through the detailed design and the costing up, but this was the sort of the images that the architects put out there just to stimulate some of the thinking and discussions around the opportunities that could be progressed through the next stage and budget permitting. Again, some images from other library redevelopments, a library redevelopment at the bottom and some health centre developments at the top. So just, you've got obviously some more detail in front of you, but just now just letting you know what the proposed timetable is. So I'll just take a bit of time and just work through this one, councillors. So at the moment we're here and we've completed the first set of workshops and internal consultation and iwi consultation and developing those concepts. So the architects, creative spaces have completed this phase of the work. At the next step for the DHB and Council is to do some initial costing estimates against those concepts just to make sure we remain within the ballpark. We've currently got the tender out, and I think I might have closed for the next phase, which is the combined detailed drawings. So this is the preliminary design moving into developed design and into the final detailed or final design. So that's the next phase. That's currently being evaluated now. So they will take up the concepts and work it through right through to the mechanical designs so that we're in a position then to go out to tender. So the next milestone, councillors, will be probably in this zone here. Once we've done all that detailed design work and we have another set of cost estimates as to whether the project is still within the appropriate levels or whether there needs to be any modification. The phase after that, really through tender, will determine again a price for the project. So at this stage we're looking at probably having to move the library to a new location in somewhere in April, May of next year, where if we're successful through that tender process, the expectation is that we would probably start physical works on the library and child health hub in July of next year. So we're probably looking then at a 18 odd month project to build or to redo the building. So that's sort of the timeline at this stage. So councillors, sort of our next steps. I've mentioned that there has been some quite extensive iwi advisory input at this stage, and it's been led for us through this process by the DHB, who have undertaken a large number of hui. So the next phase as we go into that more detailed design is to make sure that we have a joint iwi advisory cultural values group to assist the process. Clearly now we're getting down to the need to get some quite specific user input into that detailed design phase, and as I've mentioned, then we're into a procurement phase. So as far as a joint project is concerned, we're really moving out of something that's conceptual into a more operational project. So at this stage we're also looking at establishing a new steering group between the two agencies, just to make sure that we can make sure that all the elements of the project move forward. So my last two bullet points there, councillors, is we'll certainly keep you updated as to how we go through and determining estimates, that user input and the consultation work as we go through the different design phases. But probably the next most significant milestone is in March of next year, when we have some cost estimates on those detailed designs. So I'm certainly happy to answer any questions, council.
Yes, thank you very much, JP. It's certainly an exciting, colourful development, and as you say, some next steps along the process. So yes, councillors, I'd like to open it up now for some comment or some questions to JP, and if you have anything of Ron, you'll be happy to answer as well, I'm sure. Councillor Stewart was the first off the block.
Yeah. Firstly, in your timelines, JP, the demolition of community house and demolishing of community house, where does that fit in? Is that in your work start area, or is that part of the same contract, or is it a separate contract? Or
Councillors,
I've got other questions too.
Yeah, as you're aware, we made a separate decision around the future of community house, and obviously that then has some knock-ons into this project as well. So you're absolutely correct in asking when is that intended to occur. We're proposing that is likely to occur somewhere between May and June of next year. The view there would be that there is a potential that it may be wrapped up into the total contract. But at this stage we're expecting it to be separate.
And in Ron's presentation he said the whole goal of this is to, and you also mentioned it, JP, a child-friendly situation. So I hope we're going to incorporate that into Jean Batten Park as well. You just can't see from the detail, but certainly activities for children while mum's in getting the books, or dad's in with the child getting the checks or whatever. So I just hope that that's in there. And the other thing is the footprint of the building stays the same, doesn't it? The only floor extension is up on floor 3. And the final question is the cafe culture that's been created on Hope Upper Street, because I actually thought that was from Rotorua Street. Do you intend to close the cafe where the current entranceway is? Because there's that's a busy little place and a really good business. I notice on one of the drawings there is a cafe inside, but is that where you hope to, because I think this is Hope Upper Street rather than Rotorua, retain that cafe culture on the footpathing area, but also have an access point inside the library? Because the library's at this end, isn't it? At the Hope Upper Street end, or at the Rotorua end.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Councillors, I think what the issues you raised are extremely good questions, and it's part of that discussion that we need to get into at the next phase as we get through the more detailed discussions. But what you're seeing in the concept there is actually the changing of what's currently the cafe on the Haupapa corner into a meeting space. So there's a question about where the cafe might fit within it, but there's certainly been some discussions as to how and what it may look like within the library building. The other issue too is councillors, is we've also got to think about what's across the park. So you're absolutely right. It will be certainly trying to make sure we get a very much a child-friendly focus to the Jean Batten Park development. But there's also the question about what's the cafe opportunities or plans around the eyesight as well. So we've just got to be careful we don't have too many cafes all within a stone's throw of each other. So that's been one of the questions. We've just been waiting to see where we're getting to with some of the discussions with the eyesight, and certainly the detailed design has had lots of feedback from users.
And what have you
about
got planned
cafe.
on site for where community houses? Because it just looks like there's 1, 2, 3 trees there.
Councillors, at this stage, it's just that the proposal was that it just be integrated into the wider Jean Batten Park. So one of the questions we've had is really some opportunities for some. There's some interesting conversations around the air bus and the air van and some things like that may come into some of those spaces as well. So we've still got some more work to do on Jean Batten Park.
Thank you. Your Worship.
Thank you for that presentation. Nice to see the users behind you there and know that they're part of it. The Positive Ageing Committee, have they had input into this to look at the impact on older people who like quieter spaces and retreat spaces? And I've heard so many comments publicly about this, not separation, but children management for older people. How are you managing those sort of shared spaces so that we don't have the kids zooming around where older people are trying to read it quietly?
Your Worship, they have been involved, and my understanding is there's also been at least one user workshop with current users of the library, and certainly those kind of issues have been raised, and so we are aware of those. That will still come through in more of the detailed design, but what you can see in front of you conceptually at this stage from the architects was a view that as you go further into the building, you find more and more quiet zones. So we've tried to make it. They've tried to make it as accessible as possible. So as you come into the library, it's a very short walk to the elevators, central elevators, that then can take you to the different zones up through the library. So one of those is clearly a zone dedicated pretty much to study, the research and quiet zones and spaces in the library. So we're trying to make sure that all of those things can be managed successfully.
And just one little comment. Last night at the Resine Wood Awards in Auckland, Waiheke Library won award for wood innovation, and it was an old a building that was clad, an older building that they looked like they managed to clad in wood. So I love the wood first potential that we've got in this building, because of the quietness that it actually brings in a wood building. So where we could, it would be good to use wood.
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I share the concerns of Councillor Stirk concerning the loss of the cafe, particularly if it's going to be replaced with a cafe cart as shown on the plan. I think a lot more work needs to go into that, because the cafe to me is a strategic part of this whole library scenario. My main question, however, concerns the parking issues and to whether any proper parking studies have been done on this, because I'm assuming from this that the principal car parking is going to take place opposite the library on the other side of Haupapa Street in the area shown at the very bottom. And if that's the case, I question the wisdom of having only one entrance to that car park on the Haupapa Street end, which means your traffic, which can only travel north on Fenton Street to turn left into that area, is the only way into that car park. you're going to have a massive traffic bottleneck here.
Madam Chair, there has been some discussion on that design. There is actually a couple of discussions going on, certainly within Dave Foster's team with Stavros, because the issues you've highlighted there about the entry and egress into that car park is quite important, and also just from a safety of patrons coming across the road. So yes, that is an issue that's been raised on the concepts. Again, the position we're at is we don't want to overwork the concept at this stage. There was a number of questions people had as to, oh, actually, this isn't quite right, we could go back and change it, but then we're endlessly reworking the concept. So if we put a line in the sand on the concept phase, and a lot of these issues will be picked up now once we start making sure we're getting those conversations with the traffic team and other parts of the organisation on the overall detailed design phase.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I've got two questions. The first one is for both Ron and JP, and that is just approximate volumes of the two user groups, the library patrons vis-a-vis the child health hub. And while you're thinking about that one, my other question is to do with the decanting of the library. So if we're going to have a temporary library for an 18-month period, it's going to be quite a consideration as to where that is sited, and I guess accessibility to it, and the ongoing library service for an 18-month period. That's a significant period. Has any work been done on that, and when will we get that at the next update, the proposal for that? Because I think the community would be vitally interested in that.
Probably start with the last question first. It has been at the front of the mind for Jane and the library team themselves. So it is going to be a challenge for the property team supporting Dave and Jane to come up with a viable option for where to move the library or a proportion of library services. So a separate sort of plan is going to have to come together around that. So there has been some initial thinking and some discussions, but you're absolutely correct. We need to come forward probably off that stream with a very detailed plan of the where, when and how, and what the implications are for the service. Councillors, you'll recall that last time you renovated the library, it was renovated with the service retained within the library, which adds cost and time to the process. So sometimes it's a balancing act between the disruption created by maintaining the service in a construction zone versus the disruption created by moving it somewhere else. So that's some of the challenges that are going to be in place for the library team to consider. As far as numbers are concerned, I think, Jane, have you got your door count is probably the best view of traffic, isn't it?
Thank you. Councillor Wepper. Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I was just checking with Gary to see if we had a foot count. We will hold clinics in the building, so we do expect foot traffic to peak at certain times, but most of the activity is distributed from the centre. I'm not sure, Gary, if we've got any numbers for foot traffic.
I think if we have the normal kind of clinic usage that we have for the teams as they are, we'd be about 30 people per hour coming into a clinic situation, but we don't. But maybe slightly more than that coming in for information, so maybe 30 to 40 per hour.
So 30 to 40 per hour.
Thank you for those answers, Madam Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Wepper.
First, just apologise for being late, Madam Chair. And I think this is a very exciting project. I've been looking forward to it, actually. I think it's quite innovative, and I think that's got huge potential for our community. So I look forward to this. There's a lot of detail, obviously, that we wait for, but I've heard councillors this morning raise most of those issues. The only one that I haven't had answered is that we have got consultation with iwi and other age concern. The one that I
I don't know, and you may have had consultation with, is the Friends of the Library group. And I know, JP, that you're very much aware of their long-term involvement, their substantial fundraising, and the things that they have put into the library in terms of shelving, the TVs, the couches, and the books they sell, and they're just so integral. I just would like to be reassured that they are part of the consultation and that they are continue to be valued for what they do. And perhaps some of the things that they have fundraised for and put in there, is there potential to reuse them? Because I think if we can reuse things, that certainly works with our waste management strategy. We don't want to throw everything out. And certainly the other thoughts I was having is around the playground. It's absolutely vital, of course, that it's there for the children, but there could be some nice spaces for older people that want to sit outside and read books, and we need to think of planting and just our environment as well. So obviously I'm coming from my portfolio perspective. You appreciate that. So those are one of the things. And the other issue, I have to support Councillor Stewart and others who have raised the cafe. I mean, you convinced us, I think it was you that convinced us to change that entranceway in the first place, and now you're, was it you? I'm not sure, maybe it wasn't. It might have been someone before. Oh, you feel like you've been here for a long time, JP, so that's a good thing. Someone convinced us we needed it on Hope Upper Street, and you know, and it's just buzzes really well. We don't want to lose that. So however you work that out, you need to, I can see why you want the entranceway back the other way again, but it was like, this is a dark side, and the eyesight cafe didn't work very well. All these things I'm remembering came to us, and now we're saying, well, it's better it's back there, but actually we can see it's working really well. So these are some of the things I'm sure you've thought about, but we don't want to lose some of the good stuff we have already done.
Madam Chair, just probably the most important acknowledgement there is obviously the Friends. They are hugely important, and everything you've said is absolutely correct. And Jane and the team have involved them, and I see a significant role and respect of their contribution going forward as one of the user groups, and particularly having their views heard in the library's reconfiguration.
Thank you.
We have a few councillors who still wish to speak. Councillor Gould, Sharank and Hunt. Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. With your concept plan on the hub concept, you've got straight parking, and yet we've found for Rotorua that it's best with angle parking. I believe you're probably going to have more car accidents with going straight like that, because there's not going to be enough room for cars to back out safely, you know, big, huge vehicles. That's one criticism, because you've designed your parking in the CBD all angle parking, and you might lose one spot, but at least it's going to be a lot safer for vehicles. Two, I've made a public comment at this one of the council meetings previously where your library should go in an interim measure. That site is still available. If it means if that site is used, could you bring your timeline forward by 1 or 2 months? Because that could save the council quite a bit of money, in that the people in Rotorua can get employment in construction, or there might be a frame where construction workers can do something a lot quicker than doing a lot of projects all at the same time.
I hope you followed that one, JP.
Yeah, a couple of
Sorry.
issues. And Councillor Gould, your comments about the parking is something I probably don't want to comment on. I really would like to think that that's Dave's teams and traffic engineers and Stavros and Peter Dine really to give us a perspective of what best to do in that space. The second comment about available space is yes, we're looking at different spaces for potential for the library. As far as whether we can save money by doing it quicker, I think we're too early to know how long it's going to take. So at this stage, we've just put in an indicative 18-month construction period, which we're advised is reasonable and probably still quite a quick project timeline. So we'll just have to see how we go through and what comes through from that construction tender based on our final designs.
One of your comments on saying if that building become available, you could move the library earlier, which means it might give you an extra 1 or 2 months.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Councillor Sharank.
Yeah, just a question in regards to Community House. JP mentioned the demolition to take place in May, June, and while it's not the same project, it's very much part and parcel of that campus, so to speak, and could solve some of the parking problems as well. So my question is, where are we up to with our dialogue with the tenants of Community House?
Councillors, progressing well. There's two particular sites that clusters of the current tenants are looking at and are progressing with. So we've got also one tenant, quite a major tenant within the building, expecting to have moved out by Christmas. So we're expecting certainly that that May period is still feasible, and we're still providing support to the range of tenants while they look at options and certainly negotiate alternative premises.
Supplementary question, are those premises multi-tenant premises? In other words, more than one organisation in them?
Certainly, yes, they are.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt, then Councillor Taps.
Thank you. My question about numbers coming through has actually been answered, but I'd just like to make a comment about the Jean Batten Square. Certainly Myers Park in central Auckland, for those who have been there, has a very good example of new playgrounds, and I suggest if you are in Auckland you go and visit it, because that will give you some idea of the possibilities here. I think that the Eyesight Cafe, and I hope that gets developed, has long been waiting for the perfect opportunity. And the fact that this precinct is really, we're starting to join the dots here. The buses are here now. We're looking at the development of opening up the Haupapa precinct and that car park. We know that the courthouse is willing to improve their end of that whole precinct. So there's a whole lot of synergies coming through here. And I very much know that quiet space will be allocated within both the park and within the building. So I'm really looking forward to the next stage. I think it's an exciting proposal that's come through, and I think it's a great opportunity for our city to become known for its child-friendly, its age-friendly, and its shared services.
Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Councillor Tapsell.
Thank you. It's always really exciting seeing these updates, and I'm pleased to see how far it's come and to have this as well to get more of a visual on what it will be like. My question is actually on internet services. So in the past, the library was just about books. Then we saw that evolve with the technological advances. But in the future, and looking at this, I see you have increased internet services, but will you have a boost in the Wi-Fi services? So I understand there are good hotspots around the library, but will there be good quality internet across this whole complex for people that are studying, which I notice there are always a lot of people studying in that library?
Absolutely. It's one of the focuses of certainly this first round of estimates, was just understanding the costs of making sure that that's possible. And again, it's that mix of quiet and noisy zones within the library as well, so people can choose where they work and whether they're working collaboratively, which may still be on the internet, or individually studying. So it's a good question. It's certainly the library are aware of the need to make sure that their Wi-Fi is adequate and available on all the floors.
And one final question, is it from Councillor Stewart?
Just coming back to Ron, in terms of the range of children community health services that have been listed there with the red dots, and you talked about earlier the holistic health proposal for the child. Will that include before the child's born as well? I've had comment from the community saying, will Plunket services be involved? Will the midwives be there, or will they be in another area, prenatal sort of services as well?
Yes, thank you. It's we define our ages as -9 months, right through to no top end. Some of our clients have profound disability and chronic disease, and they go on into their early 20s, so we want to make sure we support them if that's their choice. Sometimes they've being dealt with by the child health team or the development team or the mental health team all the way through, so they're reluctant to give that up. So we don't define a top age. The -9 month bit is a really important component because a big emphasis in the health component is on education and improving our parenting programs, that sort of thing. This is an ideal environment. We're making sure that we've got rooms available for Plunkett to use, for anybody else to use if they want to join in and contribute to the education component as well. This is not just about treatment. This is about improving health literacy. That's why I'm so excited to work with the library, because we've already started talking about how we can improve health literacy of our parents and our children, and a really important drive for the health sector, I think, and so we're excited about that. Again, also with the wireless environment, health needs that as well, and we're working closely to make sure our clients and our staff are able to use the wireless network.
Yes, Councillor Kent.
Thank you. Just a quick point to draw people's attention to, in terms of when the parking issues are being considered. Just remember, we're also contemplating a major hotel on Arawa Street, almost opposite, and perhaps we should also start considering the potential impact of parking and additional bus traffic that's likely to be coming from that, as well as while we're looking at this.
Yes, thank you. Good point. Thank you. Thank you. I don't know, Ron, if you are aware that yesterday the Productivity Commission released their report, More Effective Social Service Delivery, and indeed the DHBs were highlighted as perhaps be more innovative in the approach to services. So this to me seems to line up very much with that. So yes, look, thank you very much for the presentation and for you coming along this morning with your team. Thank you. Thank you. It's been moved by Councillor Sturt. Thank you, Councillor Hunt. Thank you very much. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Thank you very much. Page 11. 5.1. Now, what's this recommendation? Could I please have a mover and a seconder to receive this report, which is just the continuation, isn't it? That the report continuing action for the Strategy, Policy and Finance Committee be received. Councillor Gould, thank you. Councillor Hunt, thank you. So I'll put that motion, and that's just for the continuing action. That's right. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. So that's to come back to be for the November meeting. Yes. Thank you. 5.2. Thank you. The proposal to transfer Tamatea Street to Te Tahuna Trust. It's been moved by Councillor Sharank. Thank you, Councillor Gould. We've got a mover and a seconder that the report proposal to transfer Tamatea Street to Te Tahuna Trust be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. Yes, thank you. Do you before the presentation or? Yes, yes. Oh, thank you. Good morning, Dave. Carla, good morning. Thank you very much. You're going to introduce the report.
Thank you. Look, this is the second of issues that have been long-standing around ownership of land. I won't go into any great detail. I think it's all pretty well contained in the report. Carla is here to answer any questions that you may have. This is, again, quite a long-standing issue. You'll see that it actually relates to, I think, very, very close to the end of the 19th century or very early in the 20th. So, as I say, it is a very long-standing issue. The land will continue to be used as a roadway. There's no issue in regards to it being used as a roadway, and that is effectively part of the agreements that will be entered into. But if there's any questions, Carla can answer any questions that you may have.
Thank you. I'll open it up. I mean, there's some comprehensive supporting notes there to this issue, to this agenda item. So I'll open it up now for questions. Yes, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just while I was reading through the documentation here, I note here that for the Maori Court to actually open up the roadway, the permission of New Zealand Transport is actually required. Do we have that?
I think that's the next. Sorry. Yes, Carla.
Good morning, Madam Chair, Your Worship and councillors. Yes, that is the next step in the process. The first part is the stopping of the road, and that will go through a very clear public process before the next step can be initiated.
Councillor McVicker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carla, good to see you. Just one question, if I may, on page 15, the risks. I couldn't quite understand the legal interpretation, to be honest, but are we assured that future public access, not just to the road, but to the lake via ramps, I think there are a couple of ramps there, will still be available to all?
So that is a condition that council can put on. So when we support the Te Tāhuna Trust and the application to the Māori Land Court, that is a very clear condition. The existing user rights and the rights of the residents of Tamatea Street remain the same. That is part of the Māori Land Court order, but that is a condition that we can certainly put forward.
Councillor Stewart.
This vesting, I mean, with this change, that determines Tamatea Street to then become a Maori road line. So is there an undertaking from the trust that will be formed that will get the transfer? Are they prepared to form a separate trust for the road, like we've done with many, many other road lines, like at Oahu, like at Dixon Road, Hinimoa Point, where the trust is formed and they vest the road back in council, so because no one will do any maintenance unless it is council owned, and this has been one of the ongoing issues in terms of that street, because it had no legal status in terms of council ownership, for want of a better word, or being a custodian of the road. So I hope that's the intention when they take that to the Maori Land Court. And the other issue is on the map, it shows the red line where the road stopped. Is that dock land beyond there, or is that Tāhuna Trust as well, please?
That's correct. It's a recreation reserve. So just in response to your first issue, so yes, that is a term of the Māori Land Court order. The Te Tāhuna Trust is an existing trust, and they are the landlords, landowners, represent the shareholders of that block. And as you would have seen in the background, that strip of land was something that they thought had always been returned back to them, and it's kind of just tidying up the paperwork. Yeah. And we are also exploring the possibility of maybe a MOU or some form of agreement, just in good faith, in the spirit of partnership.
So with this transfer, does that mean, and I would certainly have to ask the engineers this, an undertaking to upgrade that road, because it's absolutely shocking.
Yeah, that's correct. And this was, by following this process, it ensures that council maintain the road.
Councillor Sharank.
Thank you, Madam Chair. So, in a nutshell, Carla, it's business as usual. Councillor McVicker asked the first part of my question about access, and particularly for the public and the residents and to the boat ramps. I can be assured that that will be free and there will be no charge made for the use of the boat ramps?
That certainly is our recommendation.
Councillor Gould.
Thank you for your report, Carla. I move recommendation 2, 2 and 3. Question for you. a lot of Maryland is leased land, so I take it this is not classed as leased land, and that the public walkway will be able for anybody to walk along, and we won't get a situation like Kaitaia where a group of people came in and blocked access.
So it's Māori freehold land, but the land is leased. So there are leaseholders, and they are the residents of Tamatea Street. Because the road will remain a public road, continued public access, especially to the recreation reserve also at the end of the road, will continue.
Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Carla, can you just clarify for me so that I guess it will allay some concerns that may be out there, that the trust who we would return the road line back to is actually the trust that owns all those leasehold residential properties along there, and they are in fact holiday homes, a number of them, as well as some permanents, and it's in the trust's interest to maintain access to those homes. Is that correct?
Yes, that is absolutely correct.
Yes, thank you. And it will be good to see this tidied up because it has been an issue out there for a long time. So, Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Phil's just drawn to my attention that the letter that went out to Tamatea Street has only actually reached 4 houses so far. So perhaps Council needs to follow up on the people in Tamatea Street actually being informed of what's going on.
Yes.
Sure.
Yes, there are a lot of people out there who it's a holiday place for them, but I do know that they hand-delivered some letters this week and have been trying to get hold of the people who are the absentee householders there. Councillor Hunt, sorry.
I just wanted to speak in support of this. I'm really delighted that this has come before our council. We are tidying up a few bits and pieces, and this one sat around for, by the looks of it, nearly 100 years, and it's high time that it got resolved. It's a moral issue for the iwi out there. Nothing will change. No one will notice any difference, except they will notice they'll have a decent road, and the services that we've been unable to provide for them due to the issues facing us today will be resolved. So I see it as a good step for all of those residents, and I'm really delighted that it's come towards us today.
Thank you. Councillor Gould, you've moved 2 and 3. Thank you. Councillor Hunt has seconded. So I'd like to put those 2 and 3, they're up there. Thank you. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye, contrary. Thank you very much. This is an exciting one. Councillor Sturt. Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Thank you, Councillor Donaldson. It has been moved and seconded that the report, Rotorua Sport and Recreation Strategy, be received. All those in favour, please say aye. Thank you. So is this Amy, Andrew and Rob plus Councillor Sturt, or you're going to sit? Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you. And welcome this morning. This is an exciting piece as well. So is it Amy?
Good morning, everybody. We've just got a few PowerPoint slides. I will just introduce, I guess, the item here for discussion today with the first slide. I just wanted to take the opportunity to put it into context and sort of remind ourselves of where these strategies have come from. So, Carol, if we could just... Oh, I've got it here. Sorry. There we go. Oh. Okay. Actually, before I do that, do we have any... Oh, we don't. It's just us. Okay. All right. So, the context. Back in 2013, obviously, the council and the community set Rotorua 2030 as a vision of what we wanted to achieve, and that included 7 quite clear goals, which was very much the what. This is what we want our district to be in 2030. We then said, right, the way we're going to work out the how, or the roadmap to achieving those goals, is through portfolio strategies, working with our community to develop, I guess, that path forward. So just wanted to highlight that on the sort of slide here in terms of how that all fits in. Obviously today we've got the sport and recreation strategy coming forward, which has been developed in a close working relationship with a steering group representing many different areas of our sporting community. And we've already had the inner city strategy come to us late last year. And also we've got a few more to come this year too with creative and sustainable living. So just the sort of the map of lines there, I guess, is indicating that each of these portfolio strategies deliver on multiple goals. So it's you can see there that the different ones, I guess, all together deliver on that 2030 vision. And then underneath that, we have the more council-related, I guess, strategic plans and operational plans that we're working on around our sort of service delivery, whereas the portfolio strategies try to take an overall community approach to the portfolio. So just with that in mind, I'll just hand over to Andrew, Rob and Charles to take you through the sport and recreation strategy.
Good morning. Excellent. So we've just got a really brief presentation we'll just work through quickly and then obviously take the time to answer any questions you might have. So a little bit of background. The Sport and Recreation Steering Group has been led by Councillor Charles Sturt next to me. It has been meeting since sort of late 2014 and there's been a huge number of people involved in terms of the development of the strategy. But the core membership and those that saw it through to the end are kind of listed on the screen in front of you. They obviously represent a large number of different codes from across this town, and all of them have made a real commitment to inputting into this document. Again, there's in addition to obviously the expertise of that steering group, there was a lot of other work went on in terms of the developing the strategy. There was obviously a review of other national and regional sport and recreation strategies. We took the input from the 2014 Ideas Store. There's been a various sort of surveys run, including a recreation survey and another online survey. We've had discussions with key partners, including Te Papa Takaro, Sport Bay of Plenty and Sport New Zealand, Department of Conservation and Fish and Game. We've had presentations to the steering group from organisations including the Ministry of Health. There's been an extensive literature review and there's been a variety of sort of stakeholder interviews and meetings. So I guess what we're just trying to cover there is there's been a lot of input into this document by a large number of people. So what that's resulted in is the steering group spent some time thinking about what is the vision for sport and recreation in Rotorua. And they've basically developed this one here, which is Rotorua has active people, connected communities, and outstanding places to play. And what that was really trying to reflect was that when we look at the 2030 goals, sport and rec contributes to a number of them, and in particular the four that are up on the screen there were the key ones that were identified that sport and rec plays a major role in helping to deliver. So clearly the one at the top, outstanding places to play, but equally enhancing our environment, creating a resilient community, and also contributing to business innovation and prosperity were all goals that are supported by the sport and rec strategy. So the steering group developed four objectives to deliver that vision. The first one, a bit of a no-brainer really, is increased participation in sport and rec. We're pretty fortunate in this district to have, above the national average participation rates. So certainly when you look at the data, around about 94% of school-aged children spend sort of 3 hours or more per week actively engaged in sport and rec. That is higher than the rest of the country, but it's certainly something, that we shouldn't be resting on our laurels. And equally, when we look at adults, again, around about 75% are actively involved per week. So what we're kind of looking at there when we sort of dug in a bit deeper was that there are some groups within that that we do see drop-offs in terms of participation, and the strategy is really focused on, how do we support those particular groups, removing barriers to ensure that we kind of increase participation rates, or at the very minimum, don't see them decline. So examples of those types of groups will be, teenage girls, or particularly sort of students at lower decile schools. So again, we're kind of advocating for programs which remove barriers for groups, sort of targeted groups, as opposed to a one-size sort of fits-all type approach across the top. The second objective, and I think this one sort of speaks for itself, which is really around improving communication and collaboration between communities and sport and recreation stakeholders. I think one of the really nice, or one of the great things that came through the development of the strategy was getting all of those, particularly all those sort of sporting codes in the same room, and the conversations sort of starting to, that were generated in terms of how some of these groups can work a little bit better together to deliver better outcomes for participants. So there's a great example included in the strategy, which is a nice little case study on our proposed partnership between Swim Rotorua, the Rotorua Lakes Aquatic Centre, and the swim school there, about how they get out and work in partnership to take a swimming program to lower decile schools. It's a great example of exactly how we see this kind of thing working. Equally, I think there's a number of opportunities where we've got investment that's been made in facilities and so forth, where if we can better collaborate, we'll certainly get a better outcome overall. Leads nicely into the third one, which is very much about the facilities and environments. So we've got to provide sustainable access to high quality facilities and environments for sport and recreation that best matches community expectations. So there was certainly a bit of a thread, I think, that came through the steering group discussions, that the community is looking for opportunities where we can increase the community utilisation of some of our facilities, and that may be addressing some of the cost structures or the availability of those. And certainly there's a bit of a focus in the strategy around trying to think about how we make those more available. That might mean that we look at our future infrastructure plans in light of the guidance that the strategy provides, and equally when we're developing or delivering new infrastructure within our kind of plans, that it best sort of reflects what we're trying to achieve. And the fourth objective, which is probably where it all sort of comes together, is prioritising the enhancement and development of Rotorua's unique sport and recreation offerings. So these were really the areas that we identified as we went through the process that set us apart. There was a real feeling from the steering group that we can't afford to kind of sit on our hands around these areas. We need to continue progressing them, and that they are the ones that obviously are a real source of community pride and part of our identity when you think about who we are. So, the four key areas identified in the strategy there are obviously this kind of notional city of trails, which is something which has certainly been sort of front and centre for a lot of people over the last little while. Our lakes and the aquatic environment that goes with that, and obviously that links into the natural advantage we have around the geothermal activity and how that does heat a lot of our aquatic pools. Obviously Indigenous sport was another one that came through, and also delivering an event experience like no other. So interestingly, a lot of our traditional sporting codes spoke very fondly of one of the key things for them is around the ability to be able to hold events and national age group events here, and that's partly because of the total experience that teams that participate in those events have when they're here. So just really briefly in terms of next steps, obviously we're proposing that the strategy is available for community feedback until the end of October. We've got a range of mechanisms we'll look to utilise to engage with the community on it. Obviously there's a website. We'll be looking to the steering group to engage with their own organisations and members. Rob has got an extensive database that we'll look to utilise. We'll look to the existing forums in terms of positive ageing and the Youth Council. We'll hang on to the end of the Ideas store, and Rob's community events team are looking to ensure that we're at least along at least sort of 2 events where we're kind of doing a bit of a pressing the flesh to get comments and so forth in time to get it finalised. Our intention is to bring the steering group back together late November to look at all this feedback and consider what changes are required. And our gut feel at this stage is, given the level of engagement we've had in terms of developing the strategy, is that we're not expecting significant change, in which case we'd sort of seek that the steering group makes any sort of minor changes and the strategy is finalised. And any questions? Thank you.
Thank you very much for the report.
Chair,
Yes, Councillor
firstly,
Stewart.
first to you, Madam Chair, I just want to pay tribute to the councillors and led by Her Worship the Mayor that actually created the portfolio groups, because it's brought the focus in terms of sport and recreation where it should be, but it's not in isolation, because the flow-on effects, as Andrew pointed out, are the economic benefits, the wellness side of sport and recreation. And we just haven't talked to people who play rugby, netball and rugby league. We've talked to people who do parkai. We've talked to people who do waka ama. We've talked to people, yes, we've talked to bowls, we've talked to netball. So we haven't restricted our contact or our stakeholder group to just one particular part. We've gone right across the whole spectrum. So I just want to make those few comments, and the work that Andrew and Rob in particular have both done to get this strategy to the stage that it is at is a tribute to the work and the professionalism of themselves. I mean, we had students out last Christmas going to particular sites like the Blue Lake and etc. to go and ask the people what their expectations are of the territorial local authority and the outcomes that they wanted from that reserve, or what their experience should be, etc. One of the things that did come through very strongly was this town needs to celebrate its champions, and we don't celebrate them enough. And we're not talking just about sport and recreation. We're talking right across the whole spectrum of our community. One of the things that you'll notice in my questioning on the Children's and Library Hub, already the impact of this draft is having an effect, because my questions were specifically detailed as to the outdoor recreation possibilities in Jean Batten Park, but also recognising the need that will come through Councillor Gould's portfolio of the need that, as Councillor Sarank raised, in terms of our senior citizens having a place that they feel safe to go and recreate as well. So it's just not one glove fits all. We need to work, and we need to be, these guys need to be, when a plan has been developed, they need to be there at the conceptual stage and then the design stage to make sure that the 4 strategies that we've put, the 4 objectives, are being met right across the whole board. We can't do things anymore, Madam Chair, in isolation. So I do want to also acknowledge the people that have been on the steering group. They are a wonderful bunch of Rotorua citizens. Some of them have been long-standing in their sports. Some of them haven't been there for long. For example, the guy who does parkai, jumping off buildings and running up stairwells and all that sort of thing, just blew us away when he came along. But also the willing impact of people like Te Papa Tākaro, Sport New Zealand, Sport Bay of Plenty. They all want to partner and be involved in where we take this strategy to its next step. So just with those few comments, Madam Chair, I'll now hand over to Rob, and I'm sure he's got something to say as well. Or have I already said it, Rob? Okay.
Thank you. I'm sure we've all got a few words to say, but I'd like to ask Your Worship to probably say something to you, Councillor Stewart.
Oh, I think it's fantastic, and it's something that's now contemporary, and the community's built it. That's what I like about it. You've built it with these people. The one question I've got is the objective, the 4th objective, and we're talking about 2011 figures on the value of sport and recreation. Has there been no survey done since 2011? Because I like the target, it's almost Dublin by 2030, but is that the last time we ever looked at that?
Yeah, Your Worship, that was based on, I think, a study that was done nationally in 2011 by Sport New Zealand. When I spoke to Sport New Zealand the other day, they did indicate that they're just going through the process of updating that currently, so we should expect to see some more figures, I would have thought, early next year.
Because that's a question we're asked a lot. What is the value of an event? What's the value of a week-long event? What's the value of a day-off event? And we really don't have those current figures. Yeah.
Thank you. Councillor Webber.
Thank you, Madam Chair. First of all, I just want to congratulate you on your strategy. I think it's excellent. And I also think that you've really hit the mark in terms of what's been missing in terms of what's coming to us, whilst acknowledging the huge participation rates. I think, as you said, it's very good. But I'm really glad you're identifying where we have perhaps missed a wee bit in those people that drop off and try to make sure they don't drop off for too long. And a lot of that's around affordability, isn't it, and interest and all those sorts of things. So just with the... and I'm also very pleased, I have to say, about the Waka Ama. I remember a number of years ago, they tried to get their nationals there and we weren't interested. So we lost that to Lake Karapiro. And I thought it was a huge, sad, very sad at the time. It could have been here. We do get the secondary schools, yes, but we don't have the huge national one that has huge impact on that. But anyway, it's good for them. We've got to share it around, I guess. But so I'm glad you're picking up on that. And so what are you going to do with, what would we call them, sport coming through in the future that we may not think about that is actually valuable to our community? So I guess that's just a question. How are we going to identify that so we're thinking a wee bit ahead for new things? Because things kind of evolve and we've got to be sort of on the mark, I guess, for want of a better word.
If I can answer that, thank you. We have recognised that, yes, it needs to be dynamic. Even in some of the areas of cultural sport, we understand we don't have the infrastructure required to support some of that, and that's things that we want to do. We want to recognise areas and work out what's required and perhaps actually specifically create opportunities for that sort of thing. It will change. We have talked about once the steering group has the strategy set up, we will then actually coordinate a second group that will have a role to carry on looking at what's happening and also trying to identify some of these future opportunities as they arise and what sort of infrastructure is going to be needed to support that. So this whole process has linked the council much more closely with the sporting and recreational sectors of the town, and we want to continue that with a more regular group that stays in touch, and so we can try and identify these and target them as they turn up.
The swimming one, I think, is vital that you've hit that because of the schools. There's not many schools with pools. So how is it going with that us running the swim school now? How's that working?
Actually, very successfully. We were a little concerned that the enrolments might drop off with a new introduction of a school. They've actually increased. We've got more kids coming through now, and the school, the swim school, has created a very strong link with the educational sector, and they've actually unfortunately just missed out on a major funding bid to move out into the wider community, but we're looking at other opportunities to fund that and make it happen.
So some of the issues for people who swim is affordability. How are we dealing with that? Yeah, but I always think of swimming because of the lakes and the rivers.
Yep, a very fair point. Affordability is a key issue. It was probably, when we first got the steering group together, affordability was one of the words that we heard most often. In terms of the swim school, that funding bid that was looking at transport, the whole range of things, actually getting buses to get school kids into the pools and things like that. So that's been recognised in that how we get people to the pool, or we take our trainers out to other pools to try and actually, remove some of those barriers.
Just to comment on that and what you said, Councillor Weber, what this strategy has done is actually created good networks. I mean, we had a crazy situation, and Andrew mentioned it earlier, that netball, rugby league and rugby, our three major sports, had never ever talked to each other. And yet they engaged across the room and in the groups, the workshops that we had. We had a lot of like groups of 5, and these guys strategically placed people to make sure that we got the cross-section of discussion, etc. Now, I forgot to mention the communications team. They have been unbelievable in terms of not steering or guiding, but being the catalyst for all this information to come together. The other thing is the point you made, Councillor Weber, and that's why we need the ongoing, after this process is finished, we need to be light on our feet, be dynamic, and be able to adapt to new innovation and new things coming through. So I think that's important. So the job of the working party is, after the submissions and this report is finally presented to Council, will end, and the proposal that we'll discuss at a high level with Her Worship and maybe the other portfolio leads is to have an advisory group of maybe 6 or 8 people, and they can be on a more regular basis, because it's been very hard to coordinate getting everyone in the same room at the same time, but we got there in the end. But I thank you for your comments, Councillor Weber.
Councillor Hunt and then Councillor Kent.
Great strategy. Well done, Charles, and the rest of the team. I just have a question. Is there a calendar currently that all the sporting codes can look up to see who's playing what where? And that leads into my second one. Dave's often talked about an app, and I was thinking of a sports app where the field comes up or the aquatic centre comes up, all the details you can drop down to find out a class, what's happening there, what national sporting events, and all of those things. So is that a possibility in the future?
Thank you, Councillor. No, there isn't a calendar, and it's something that it's even in Objective 2 about collaboration and communication. It's that sort of thing that we've recognised as a major issue. I mean, just recently, all the codes put their own little ads in the paper to say we're having a muster, and they appear any time over a sort of 4-week period. We've just tried to coordinate everyone to have a single page, where we can get a whole page in the paper that says, look, everybody out there, these are all the things, these are the groups, these are the ages, and it's just that sort of thing exactly that you're talking about. We've recognised as a fault and needs to be fixed.
Further on that, because there's obviously synergies for small and large events to happen on the same weekends, or not to have the clash of 2 large events. And I think that because the apps, particularly for many people with smartphones, and not everybody in the community, but a lot of people access a large amount of information that way. So I'm looking forward to that being available, and anyone turning up at a sports field can actually figure out what goes on there, who does it, when, and who to contact if they want to join in. Fantastic.
Thank you. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Having sort of read through this, I congratulate you on the work that's gone into it and the effort that you've put into it. If I can draw your attention just to one particular area which I feel is possibly a little bit lacking, and that is what you see as your measurements of success for actually achieving what you're trying to achieve. And I think you've possibly missed a number of very specific opportunities. For example, you could very easily measure the levels of obesity in Rotorua. And for example, if there was an improvement in that, it could be seen to you're actually having a significant good effect. You could do things like improve the calibre of the boat ramps, giving better accessibility for people trying to access facilities and so on. So I think perhaps there are a few areas that with a little bit more thought you can be a little bit more specific, and perhaps a little bit less airy-fairy, like sort of increasing the percentage of residents who visited parks, reserves and so on. I mean, to me, that's not achieved anything. If you want to achieve that, you actually hire 3 buses and you will immediately increase the figure.
Yes, I think Councillor Kent's probably talking about a framework of measurement. So yes, and I presume that will come. But yeah, you're quite right. You've got to be able to measure the difference that you're making. That's right. Now, Councillor Sharank and then Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have read it in detail, and it is a high-level document. And my question is, what do you expect to get back in the feedback? Are you expecting submissions from groups or organisations? You know, what can they submit on in this document? That's my question. What do you expect them to submit on?
Sorry, got a bit of hay fever. We're expecting, I guess, groups and individuals to be able to provide feedback, and so the intent was to provide a short questionnaire that kind of does sort of tease out some key questions around the vision and the 4 objectives. Like any strategy, the list of actions is not exhaustive. You know, there's certainly other actions that will come along, and really the bit that guides decision making is really the objectives and the strategies which sit underneath those. So,
and the issues you raised, Glenys, and you know, like Rob raised regarding obesity and being able to measure things, we think that's the next step down. We, as you said, and you recognise, Glenys, this is a high-level, aspirational strategy, but the actual work that will be done underneath the strategy is the key to its success. And being able to, as you said, Rob, being able to measure the success, measure the impact, have accessibility, make sure it's affordable. These were all key themes that we've had from just the working party. So when this goes out, this will go out to all the sporting groups, I've been assured by the team. Rob's got a huge database of all the groups. This will go out and we'll get that next level feedback as well. But ostensibly we want it on the major strategy at this stage. But the feeder things, like with the inner city strategy, new seats, green areas, TUIs, that sort of thing. But the overall strategy is looking down on that. So involvement of those groups, Glenys, is basically at any level. I mean, the hardest thing was to engage with recreational groups. I mean, we had to define firstly what sport was and firstly what recreation was, because there's no end to the string. And that's what we did, and that's why we come up with what we've come up with.
Councillor Gould and then Councillor Wepper, in your worship.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair. Thank you very much for your report. Just make a few comments. You know, you've got walking as part of the sport too, because it is an Olympic sport. And I still think walking should be mentioned somewhere in there, plus also the parents, the mothers or fathers who support their children every Saturday or every Sunday, taking their kids to sporting games. You know, they give a lot of time and a lot of effort promoting their kids into sports. And also, I talk on page 23 of your book. You've got for 2016-2017 Rotorua Sporting Hall of Fame, but also do a part for a coach or a person who goes out every Saturday supporting them with oranges or water or whatever else. You know, it's those sorts of people which help make the sports great and makes the kids possibly sometimes in the future become an Olympic champion like Danny Lee.
We could be an Olympic one because it's an Olympic sport next year.
Thank you. Councillor Wepper.
Madam Chair, I hope you don't mind. I just wanted to make a comment just with some of what I've been hearing councillors around the table saying. And it is in reference to some of the statistics that have been asked for. Just, I think our portfolio leads haven't had a chance of late to get together, and in due course we will. But we don't want to necessarily double up. And through my portfolio, we've just done a city scan that we all agree to, that's gone to Melbourne, and are coming back with the results of that. And that really does mention our current existing obesity, our sport and recreation. It's got a whole lot of data in there from DHB and other areas. So I'm just mindful that we shouldn't be sending a message that we're expecting all portfolios to do this. It possibly can come through one, and we will know or assume and make sure that it's clearly written at some point that all of our strategies and our portfolios are working towards creating this more positive future. And so I just wanted to not have the wrong message that we're necessarily expecting that everyone should be doing this.
Well, one example, and we're using your comments, Councillor Weber, one example is what Crankworks has brought to this town through the economic development that Dave, his portfolio, it's got a swing over in economic development, it's got a swing over in terms of sport and recreation, but it's also got a swing over into the other portfolios because it then encourages young people to go and buy a bike and go out doing trail riding. I mean, some of these things are very, very hard to measure, and a lot of what we have feedback we've had is perception. There is a perception that Rotorua is the hub of mountain biking in New Zealand, and we want to make that perception a reality. But you're right, partnering up with like the health department and all these other groups, we don't want to go out reinventing the wheel with, because we could spend an inordinate amount of money finding out the statistics that tell us all the same message. Yeah, exactly.
Thank you. Your Worship?
It's just the comment about where to next with this going out. I absolutely agree that it gets promulgated widely because you still meet people that don't know we have a disability committee that's looking at wheelchair access. You still meet people that don't know there is an urban cycleway plan that's linking the suburbs in with the heart of the city. So individuals, I'm sure will get individual responses. I get letters on a daily basis about questions that I know are being picked up by the Cycle Action Group or the Disability Group, but still, legitimately, if they don't know, they need to know how to reference into this document. So it needs wide promulgation, and I think it's great individuals outside of codes can actually reply into it.
At the end of the day, I mean, there's nothing come forward with the inner city redevelopment on making that a children-friendly place. That's why I asked the question regarding Jean Batten Place. There's a lot of activity for retailers and parking and things like that, but where are the people activities that can occur within that space? And this is where the linkages between the portfolio, and I agree with you, Councillor Weber, the portfolio group chairs need to meet on a regular basis too, because we've got cross-party interests that we need to bring together.
And so much is interlinked. You're quite right. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, I think it's a fabulous document, a great starting point for a strategy to go out for the community to have some input on. What I particularly like is the acknowledgement of the crossover between the various portfolios. And look, we've heard today, there was Karen's suggestion about the app. Well, we also heard about how the digital strategy that's being worked up is important also for the library. It's important for all the services that the council, and just actually for livability in Rotorua, that's going to be so increasingly important. I attended a couple of event organisers forums recently run by Rob's team, and we do have this fight for space in Rotorua, and we've found it with setting the dates for Crankworks. We've moved them twice to meet the accommodation restrictions that we have in Rotorua, but also other event organisers have had to jostle their events around a big event like that coming to town. So I take my hat off to Rob and his team, the work they're doing, because it's just boiling up in that office of his. That little cauldron is boiling away, and so I think this strategy is a great platform for sport and recreation just soaring in Rotorua in the future. So well done.
When Councillor Donaldson took over the economic development area, I was thrust into it, and Dave had certainly set the platform. So I just, along with these two guys and many other people, have just taken it forward. So I just want to, in finishing, Madam Chair, ask the gentlemen if they have any further comments they wish to make, and particularly emphasising on where we go to from here.
I think just briefly, just to reinforce that it has been a very collaborative effort to get to this. We had, we had a steering group that turned up out of 2 stakeholder meetings where I think we had about 60 people to the first one and even more to the second one. So we hit every group and recreational target that we could. We got the steering group. We've been out and about a lot. So I think the council should just be aware that they have confidence that we went far and wide to get this information, and we got a very consistent message. So hopefully that'll make it very easy to deliver on it.
Thank you very much. And you could hear this morning how well received the strategy has been received. It is inclusive, it is aspirational, and of course thank you to the steering group and the staff. But I want to, I'm sure on behalf of your colleagues here, Councillor Stewart, just thank you for your leadership of this portfolio. Because it's come together within quite a short time, really, and particularly it always takes the leadership to drive it into existence. So thank you very much.
Some of those people have never missed a meeting, and their commitment to the furtherance of Rotorua is just laudable. So with those few words, Madam Chair,
Thank you.
Quite happy to move 2 and 3 of the recommendation.
2, I think we've got, isn't it? Just 2?
Yeah.
Thank you. You're going to move 2. We have a seconder, please. Oh, thank you, Councillor Tapsell. So point 2 up there, it's been moved by Councillor Stewart, seconded by Councillor Tapsell. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair, I've just got a brief presentation because I think it's quite important that we just really have a look again at the context for the survey that we've undertaken, and really as a guide to what we're asking you to do today, which is to identify a policy position for Council around local government reform and amalgamation questions. So, councillors, just leading off, and this presentation does follow the report I have in front of you, and so I'll just paraphrase some of these elements. But as you're aware, all of this is for this government has started around the questions around Auckland and the need to get that coordination and the opportunities that were seen to get economies of scale or efficiency and effectiveness out of pulling together the different elements of Auckland. Now, obviously, councils, that then was translated down into changes to the Local Government Act, so my abbreviations there, to provide the LGC, which is the Local Government Commission, with the tools really to look at what communities wanted as far as their governance and representation is concerned. So really that was the key change the government made there. So the approach though being taken by the Local Government Commission and the model they've been promulgating through all the discussions based on that efficiency and effectiveness model is really to create larger unitary authorities. So really replicating at a provincial level or a local level outside of Auckland some of those scales that were identified from Auckland. Now obviously over the last year or so there's been proposals considered and a lot of publicity around them for Northland, Wellington and Hawke's Bay. And so really that's focused a lot of attention in this space about what are the opportunities for amalgamation or the need for amalgamation. Furious debates in those different areas for those for and those against. And obviously it has then spilled over into questions about the future for the Bay of Plenty. And we've highlighted in here really a lot of that focus in the Bay of Plenty has revolved around the questions around Tauranga City Council and the Western Bay of Plenty District Council and their boundary issues, and obviously the extension of Tauranga City out into another council area. So really the question there is if that boundary issue came to the fore, it might kick off an amalgamation question for the entire Bay of Plenty. So really that concern or those concerns about that issue and being ahead of the game led to some quite significant conversations at the Chief Executive and mayoral level in the triennial meetings. And really the view of what have we learnt from what's happened with Northland, Wellington and Hawke's Bay was the view that we needed to do some research and do some thinking in advance of any amalgamation proposal being put on the table. Now that led to the piece of work that's been called the Local Government Futures Project, which is still moving through looking at different services, and then once it's reviewed the efficiency and effectiveness of those services, what's the governance framework that would best support the deliveries of those services. So what I've highlighted there is still that research and as a collective has really focused on that form follows function. And again, it's a similar methodology that's been applied through the Local Government Commission from that top-down perspective, and also in that view of what was happening in Auckland. So that's sort of the background as to where we were. So clearly, during some of those heated debates in the Wellington, Northland and Hawke's Bay, there's been a lot of research undertaken and different commentators drawing on international experience and views. TBD advisory was commissioned mainly by Hutt City to look at the questions about what's the optimum size for councils, and obviously they saw some efficiency gains up to a point, but then a decrease, or reflected on the fact that sometimes it doesn't occur at all. So there's a sort of a U-shaped, that sometimes smaller councils can be more efficient than bigger councils. The other sort of work that's come through there is from other commentators that are referred to in the report, like Amos and McKinley, who have also highlighted some other sort of criteria or factors that need to be considered. And those are sort of identified on page 64 of the agenda, councillors, and that's around things like in section 4.1, the concepts around localism and communities being able to make decisions for themselves or being best placed to make decisions about the services. The fact that any structures that need to be considered have to generate those economies of scale, and also the need for central government to be involved in collaborative service delivery at a local level. So really trying to get that localism and subsidiarity type perspective to it. Now the Minister of Local Government has been quite clear though that really the policy position from central government has been it needs to be communities able to decide what those local governance arrangements are. So where the Local Government Commission has been quite clear in saying, look, this is a way of getting economies of scale, of bringing all of these councils together, the community's perspectives have been quite strong in opposition. So clearly we didn't go through, or Wellington and Northland weren't progressed any further by the Local Government Commission. The Minister signalled that it was off the table, but really those communities had to look about, there needs to be reforms and there needs to be a refocus in that sort of space. So really the other things we've highlighted in this report is some of those key messages that we're starting to see from that research, and particularly some of that international research that's picked up by writers like Amos, Dollery and McKinley, around the importance of identity and local identity and the abilities of communities to have a strong sense of community, and that enables them to make the right decisions about their services and to work collaboratively with other service providers. So that's that social cohesion type question there. Also the importance, and it's referred to in the report too, about the importance of local confidence to economic development and initiatives that drive economic delivery at the local level. And again, that starts looking at those questions of where is it right to deliver services, what ones should be considered at the local level, and what can be considered as a more of an economies of scale type approach. So again, you know, we've referred to in the report that need for innovation in service delivery. And the Minister, certainly at the Local Government New Zealand conference, has said, you know, it's important for communities to have their choice about their governance arrangements, but, and the important but is, there is a need to keep looking at how you can be more efficient and effective and respond to community needs. So there's some good examples around the country, and certainly some progress being made that we need to look very seriously at. Within the report, we've looked at examples around waters, so we're making some reference to water care and Auckland Transport, and certainly in the subsequent item today, discussion about what's happening in the Waikato around their CCOs and their water services discussion. So it's important that in looking at the survey results, we see the unique value of the Rotorua Lakes Council area or the district from a leadership perspective and building our community and supporting economic growth, but also looking at how we can get economies of scale around important services. So really that's been the focus of where we've put this report together from. So councillors, if you recall, the last time we spoke about amalgamation, and we had a paper that went to, unfortunately I listed it in the report as SPNF in April of this year, but it was actually on the O&M report, so in April. So what we did at that time was we put quite a detailed report to you that traversed some of that theory and some of those questions that needed to be considered. And rightly at that time, a number of councillors said, well, hang on a sec, we can't formulate a policy position at this stage because we haven't heard what the community thinks. So that was really the driver for us to go out with a survey. It was conducted on our behalf by APR. It was a random survey of 400 residents. And it was also balanced on as much as possible on age, gender and ethnicity, just to make sure it was a representative sample. The messaging we got back was extremely clear, and so those are the sort of the headline results, councillors. So we spent some time making sure that the survey wasn't leading, so we looked at advantages and disadvantages, but these were the key messages that came out of that response. So councillors, what we're seeing now is it does tend to confirm the policy position that we have been developing in how we've structured our discussions locally, our interactions with other councils, and certainly our interest in sharing shared services in the waters and in the transport area. So councillors, as you see, those are the key headlines that were included in the report. And so I suppose just in summary then, the Auckland scale argument remains disputed, but it certainly was the approach taken by the Local Government Commission in looking at a single unitary authorities of quite considerable size. I've reflected in this report here that increasing community concern, so regardless of that economy of scale, communities pushing back on saying, hey, they want representation, they want local leadership, and they want their identity protected as much as possible, while still looking for improvements in efficiency and effectiveness. I've talked about the rejection of Northland and Wellington. I had Hawke's Bay listed there with a question mark because I was waiting to see the results that came through yesterday, and they were quite strong no to amalgamation from that referendum in the Hawke's Bay. So councillors, if you recall, before we put that report to you in April, we had that workshop with the Hutt City CE, who just talked about the approach that they had taken. And if you recall, they were quite clear in saying, look, we need to get the views of our community before we push a particular position, and that was very important to them. So they took that sort of survey response and that formulated a policy position for them, which really helped them through that whole Wellington amalgamation debate. And so the other thing too then is, which has just been a focus for a lot of the research, is that really that need to protect local leadership and decision making whilst delivering innovative services and looking for those economies of scale. So Council, that's really been the basis of how we've got to what we've got in front of you here, which is to say we've now got that clear community view. And what's being asked from you today is just whether you would like to confirm that within a policy position for this council to take into its discussions, not only in the Bay of Plenty, but also into the Waikato and wider. So, as I say, we've tried to pick up on the results that we had, and again reflecting some of those key messages that Rotorua District has a unique identity and sufficient scale to justify having its own mayor and council. That the council must retain the ability to plan, rate and determine services and associated delivery services. So that's really taking us away from a view that we might be or could be or should be a local board. The services most effectively delivered locally should be controlled and provided locally, and certainly the reports and some of the writers have signalled those kind of services that should be in that category. But most importantly too, that we also look at alternative service delivery for those that would benefit from scale. So the key here is that we would look at them, and we need to investigate them, consider them appropriately, and then make sure our community is involved in that discussion as well. But we certainly are not going to be able to avoid that continued focus on how do you get more efficient and more effective. And so scale and efficiency is still going to be a focus. And finally, that this position be communicated to the other councils participating in that local government futures project. So emphasising our approach and really the important facets of what this district means through into that research and future decision making. So Council, that's very much a short potted covering presentation for my report. Happy to answer off any questions.
Very much, JP, and we'll open it up for discussion. Councillor McVicker.
Chair, thank you, JP, for your overview. I'm pleased you brought up the issue of Tauranga and Western Bays, because in the back of my mind I seem to recollect being told that could precipitate us going down that amalgamation track in this Bay of Plenty region. Can you give us a clearer view as to where we stand in relation to that, if it goes ahead, and what the likely outcomes could be, and hence our position?
Madam Chair, at the time, so when the local government futures work was considered and the mayors and CEs were discussing it, the local government commission was had a particular view, and I suppose that was really the concern, that any sort of discussion about the boundary between Tauranga City and Western Bays would initiate a wider review of the Bay of Plenty. So you're correct. That's, at the time, that was really the thing that was foremost in the minds of all mayors of the Bay of Plenty, was the particular issues in the Western Bays would result in an amalgamation debate for the whole Bay of Plenty. So hence their desire at that time to start getting in advance and showing that there was some research being undertaken. I think what we're seeing now with where Wellington, Northland and now Hawke's Bay have gone, and is that there may be a shift in how the government views the need to address these. So I maybe the Chief Executive might want to comment further on that, but at the time it was that issue was the concern.
As to what the ramifications could be for us in the event of them getting together, which is logical, let's face it, in the future.
Flow-on effect, what that's likely to be. Your Worship, did you want to comment?
Comment on that. They're trying to avoid pushing a trigger that gets us all sucked into an amalgamation debate. But they're looking at boundary adjustments, which could be a softer option, but that's up to them to propose. I've heard no more on that at all. But we're still under the Local Government Commission that if there were to be a change, then that trigger is pushed. So that's why it's really good that we've done this, because that's what we've got to work under until the Crown changes the direction to the Local Government Commission. But it's for them to decide their way forward, but I don't think anyone, from what we're learning, wants to push an amalgamation button. And the Crown clearly said it at the Local Government Conference. We don't want to go where we don't need to go, but those that are on the table are still before the Local Government Commission.
You have a question for JP?
Yes. Thank you, Carol. We were getting into service delivery discussions lower down in these recommendations, which would become a policy. But I think it's very important, and I'm recommending an amendment to add E, that we still continue to look at collaborative approaches across traditional boundaries on issues that are going to be economic development issues for us, such as geothermal, wood first and fresh water. So I want that included in the policy, and I just recommend that we add that as an item 2E. It's not just about service delivery, it's about other opportunities that we should be exploring. So I move that we add
Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to actually suggest that we remove the second sentence in under D because it's actually superfluous.
Second. Oh, hang on. That's it. Personal services, the council team. Yeah, it is. It is superfluous.
Could I speak to that?
Yes.
This is not my recommendations, but I see a point of difference, Councillor Kent. The first one's about planning, rating, and how they'll be delivered. But down the bottom, it's saying that we've got to be involved in the determination of what services that we're prepared to work in. I see it as slightly different, and it may be because of where we might be heading. It could be redundant, but I think you've got to keep that in there.
To be very clear, yes. Thank you, Jeff. Perhaps, yes, I'll ask RC. Jeff.
Yes, thank you. Councillors, one of the things that this is repeated 4D, and you're quite correct in some ways that it looks rather superfluous because it's mentioned twice. When you look at alternative models, you're invariably going to look at some sort of jointly owned CCO type structure. Now, the issue potentially here, and I think it's particularly relevant, is that what control do you wish to retain? What control do you wish to have if you're looking at the formation of a joint approach where you're going to place the responsibility for delivery of a particular service into a jointly owned company with other councils? So that's the key here. So what do you want to actually retain? Now, the reason why this is actually effectively being doubled up is that the recommendation to you is that whilst you may choose to actually make the decision to enter into such agreements for the creation of entities with other councils, it's critical that in doing so, the ability to plan services, to rate for those services, and then to determine how they will be provided must be retained in the council. Now, this is a very different situation from, for example, Watercare or Auckland Transport, where you've got both CCOs effectively determining most of those things themselves directly. So, in other words, Auckland Council itself does not rate directly for water. That is actually something that Watercare does. So Watercare sits totally independent almost, although it's a CCO of Auckland Council, it does sit independent in its ability to undertake those aspects. So what this is trying to do is to be very clear about in determining D that is not an exception to the principles associated in B. So that's why it was there.
Let's do it.
Madam Chair, I think C, for me, allows the opportunity to have public-private partnerships. I don't think it closes the door on that. However, on page 64, Philip Barry's quote, local democratic decision-making, the purpose of local government is likely to suffer if governance becomes increasingly centralised. This is the larger a council becomes, the more distance it is likely to be from the individuals and communities of interest it represents. Isn't that the truth with Environment Bay of Plenty? At the moment, over the rules it's trying to promulgate regarding pastoral issues, there is a huge conglomerate that isn't connecting with its community. And another example recently is the CCOs in Auckland, where they just unilaterally go ahead and make decisions without the elected representatives even having any say in it. So for me, the jury's out on the CCOs that we've created as well. I'm going to be watching them like a hawk. Madam Chair, what I'm worried about in terms of, I want fresh water defined, because I don't want to signal that we're prepared to truck our fresh water in a pipeline anywhere else in the Bay of Plenty to improve their economic development opportunities. I think fresh water is too glib. I think it should be fresh waterways, because we need a collaborative approach to, for example, the issues of waterways in Taupo and Rotorua. So no, I'm not talking about the drilling and the provision of fresh drinking water. So I think that needs to be defined. And for me, the jury's out as to whether CCOs are this panacea which are being set up for locals to have local say in issues. I am also going to say the use of the words in the, which one was it? Plan rate, human services and associated delivery levels. While I'm happy with collaboration, I will be looking to make sure that that is not a message to anybody out there in the community that this council wants to privatise the service delivery of our core services, which is sewerage, water, etc., etc. And I think what we've done, sort of going against what I said before, with our CCOs, we've done that in a way to ring fence them to make sure that their service provision is appropriate to the time that we're living in at the moment. So, a bit of a mixed message here, but I've just got some alarm bells starting to ring, which I'll be watching to make sure that we act in the best interest of our ratepayers rather than an ethos of privatisation or using our resources to develop another area within the Bay if that's what's required.
Thank you, Councillor Sturt. Councillor Kent.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just going back to that point on D, can I suggest, just for brevity, that we make it subject to be alternative service delivery approaches, and then you can get rid of the remaining sentence because it is needless duplication. But I do understand the distinction. Just at the start of D, subject to be, comma.
Alternative, yes, subject to be.
And then take out the second sentence.
Subject. Yep. Thank you. If there are no further speakers, could I please have a mover and a second to... Oh, beg your pardon, Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd like to question some of the survey results if I can, because it's part of the report. On page 72 of table 2, would be better to show what preferences for the ratepayer of the 400 people who put in the survey, what their second and third choice was, because it would show what the main areas of council, what the main parts of that report were affecting people. Because at the moment you're only showing 134 out of 400 residents. Tourism reckon that's number one to make Rotorua better, but some of those other could be a higher number if A, B and C were added together. And also on page 79, it would be better as councillors to know what the other 19 suggestions are for council to sharing services with other councils, because then we know what different people are thinking about. And just as a matter of record on page 80, when you've got 75 plus people who've taken part in the survey, you've got 53 respondents. That's equivalent to about 13% of the Rotorua population. Is it equivalent to 13% of the Rotorua population of 65,241? And with the 400 submissions, it would also be better to show if the people were working or not working, because we've got 28,500 people working in paid employment, but we might have got 400 people who took part in this survey which were not working, which could obscure the results.
Thank you, Councillor Gord. I think you can probably read into it. You can skew it anyway, I suspect, with a survey. So I really wonder what value would be in drilling down. But I'm sure if you do want any further information, the staff officers will get it for you. But I think it's sufficient for what we've got there. Councillor Donaldson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy to move point 2 of the recommendation. I just think it's really good to have this survey to put this matter to bed, because I hate to think what it's cost this whole local government futures thing right around the country, but certainly in this region as well. So someone will work that out one day and tell us, but
yes,
happy to move.
Thank you. We have a mover and a seconder, and I think you're quite right, Councillor Donaldson. Our position is clearly stated there for other councils. If they want to, they can see what we think and the position we've taken. So yes. So thank you. Councillor Sharank has moved. Seconded by Councillor Weber. All those in favour, please say aye. Contrary. Thank you. Water service delivery options. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, to receive the report, water service delivery options? Thank you, Councillor Gord. Move Councillor Gord, seconded Councillor Hunt. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. And thank you. Good morning, Dave. Thank you very much. You're going to introduce the report.
Yes, through you, Chair. I won't go terribly much into the report. The Waikato councils, as we say in there, have been reviewing water for probably around about 18 months now in terms of a number of different reviews. It started as a mayoral initiative. It's now down to 3 councils who are considering the matter further. So there is potentially an opportunity for us to approach them and see whether they would allow Rotorua to engage with them in that process as they're going through doing further research. Important to note within here that this is not a decision to go down the track of a shared CCO. Any move on that would be required to go through a significant public consultation process through the special consultative procedure. So this is really just a decision to ask whether Rotorua can work with them as they're going through further stages of analysis.
You, Councillor Kent, and then Councillor Mitwicker.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I have no issue with the staff actually exploring the possibilities. I do have an issue with us going down the track of looking at forming CCOs, and I think that's totally premature. I think at this stage it should be staff exploring to see what the possibilities can be, and then come back to us before we look at any possible structures.
Yes.
Happy with B, C and D. It's just working collaboratively. There is no CCO structure on the table. I'm happy for it to, yeah.
That's the question. Can I answer?
Yes,
Madam
please
Chair?
do.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying. There is no strong indication. It says, note that a decision to form a CCO for this purpose. So it's signalling that we are going to look at the options of forming a CCO. That's my problem. I'm happy that staff work collaboratively with these other councils, but forming a CCO for what purpose other than to talk about technologies in common, the delivery of the service, etc., etc. I've got no problem with that at all. But if that's what A, B, C, and D means, that we are not going down that path, I'm happy to go with it. I'm just already alerted it in my previous discussion that I'm really against this sort of thing of service delivery across regions.
Thank you. Councillor McVicker.
Madam Chair, I for one have no problems with CCOs. I think it's been explained to us in the past, the benefits that they can generate, but that's another issue. My question is more directed at the fact that I'm uncertain as to why we're talking to the Waikato region, albeit they have been doing this exercise for 18 months or some time. And I'm pleased to see under 2D that we have recognised the Bay of Plenty region. Have we ventured down the track of talking to our other councils in the Bay of Plenty region about such collaboration, or not at this point of time?
We have had discussions at the officer level with Tauranga, but the work in the Bay is going down the track of the other approach. I think it's worth noting that Rotorua is a member also of the Waikato region. Right? So Rotorua is part of the Bay of Plenty and also part of the Waikato. The reason for talking to Waikato is actually Waikato is incredibly advanced. They have been working on this for quite a while. They have consulted with their community about taking the exploration further in terms of the reports they have. They may also be interested in terms of it being bigger than just the Waikato, but that's a question for them to determine. One of the things about water and infrastructure services is actually that scale is important. You know, one of the things with shared service, and I've made this observation for a number of people, Manukau City formed Manukau Water in 2007. Manukau Water had 300,000 population, served 140,000, 120,000 properties. That got picked up with significant efficiencies into water care. The entire Bay of Plenty is smaller than Manukau Water was.
Madam Chair, through you, I understand, I get that message about scale in particular, but surely our priority should be directed towards, perchance, the regional council who are accountable for water in our region. I'm just getting the impression that we're kind of drawing a line between our council and the regional council, not just on this issue, but other issues too. And I'm not sure whether I'm comfortable with the direction we are taking.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Councillor, this is really focusing on the provision of water services, so wastewater, water supply, which is obviously not a regional council function. The key thing in the Waikato, I think, is that the three councils that are involved in the discussions have all got major development, capital development projects in front of them. So they're all looking to say, we're actually all planning, we're all in an engineering stage, we're all looking at how do we build these major projects together, or major projects. Why are we looking at doing this individually? Can we actually form a more focused team which actually are able to work together and learn from one another and apply the expertise that we've got in a much more flexible way than just doing things within existing boundary structures? So our thought was that we likewise have got exactly the same challenge in front of us. We've got some very, very large projects that we're going to be undertaking over the next few years. And yes, we could continue down our current track and do those within our boundaries, with our existing team and so on. Now, I'm very confident with our current staff. They're a very capable group. But that doesn't say that by working alongside these other groups which are also doing exactly the same sort of pieces of work, that we couldn't learn, that we actually couldn't share skills and expertise that otherwise we wouldn't have an opportunity to access. As the Chief Operating Officer says, Waikato by far is the furthest down the track in exploring this. Our water projects are not too far into the future, and so if we're going to benefit from this sort of collaborative opportunity, we can't leave it too late. That's fundamentally I think the message around why Waikato. Having said that, we're aware that Tauranga is also exploring similar opportunities at the moment. They've got an eye to what's happening in the Waikato, but they're also looking to the Bay of Plenty and the local government futures work to say, well, we're not sure where this is going to go. So it's a bit of a fluid opportunity at the moment, so it's an exploratory one by nature, but I think an important one for us to be looking to say, what can we gain here? What leverage can we gain through work with these groups that otherwise, working alone, we wouldn't have?
Thank you. Councillor Webber, I think.
Yeah, I hear what everyone is saying around the table. I think, first of all, I think it's good to work with Waikato and Bay of Plenty regional councils. We do straddle both, so I think it's important we do both. And we've always worked quite well with Bay of Plenty in some areas. And I know that, is it our dog control, Dave, that we have got that arrangement with Waikato Regional Council? And that seems to work very well. So it makes sense to me that if they're already doing something, to ask the questions and get the information we might need. I do take note of Councillor Sturt and his concerns about B there. I mean, I don't think it's vital we take it out. It just does give the impression that we're already thinking of a CCO, and maybe that could be slightly premature. That's the only concern I have. But I have heard people in the community say to me, even over the last year, like, you know, what are you doing to make sure that protect our water? I think people in our community value our water. They value the cleanliness, they value the standard, and they value the availability. And I remember in times past, other councillors have said, well, we pay high rates, but we don't have water rates. So they're quite, you know, because we've got high rain and all those sorts of things. So people worry about water and the cost of it and who controls it. I think we need to remember those messages and think about them carefully. That's all I'm concerned about. And I'm not saying that this may not be a better way to go. It could be, but I need to be convinced and have all the information we need. So that's all I would say on that. And it's just a heads up to staff, really.
Thank you, Councillor Webber. Your Worship?
Just to help, if it helps in B, we could say that any decision, not a decision, so it means that if ever it was to come, so we could amend that to any, and I think that reflects then your and Councillor Sturt's concerns. And then as the discussion from Councillor McVicker, which was a good point to raise, we are in the middle of a local government futures and project, and the CEO talked about that. That is within the wider Bay of Plenty region, and water is one of the work streams that we're considering in there. So we're there. We're in that space now. This is just as the CEO said, that they're so much further ahead. So, you know, we need to hook into that thinking as well and see, you know, if there is something in there for Rotorua. And it may be for others in the wider Bay of Plenty. When we say the wider Bay of Plenty, we're talking about Tokoroa and Taupō also in that discussion. That's a project, a funded project, which we're participating in. But this is just saying, you know, let's look a bit further. And also, Minister English is promulgating the Three Waters report, and that's about water and infrastructure, and very clearly indicating we need to be thinking and working in this direction, keeping our own decision-making close to us. So I see this as a very good sort of policy position.
Councillor, oh sorry, yes, Jeff.
Councillors, just I want to draw your attention to the fact that these set of recommendations are subject to the previous decision you made. So the previous decision you made was that you would not enter into any agreement for collaboration, regardless of form, CCO or whatever, if that agreement meant that you were giving away control. So your previous policy position with regards to the importance of retaining control is pivotal to this direction. So whenever staff are talking with the Waikato around this opportunity, what we're now very clear about is that you are very certain that the issue of being able to rate, plan and control service delivery is something that you are not going to give away. So what we're really talking about, therefore, is a collaboration which is all about sharing and working how we can gain knowledge, skills, share resources and so on.
Thank you. Councillor Donaldson.
Yes, thanks, Madam Chair. Look, I'm happy to move to, and look, I think everything that's just been said by the CEO is on page 86 under discussions and options and the key issues for consideration. So, you know, it's talking about staff will consider or identify any gains and what input and control we will have in relation to price setting, as we've set in that earlier policy decision that's just been made. So I'm completely comfortable with this, and I'm also reassured that it will come back to us before any steps down the track are taken towards the CCO.
Thank you. Councillor Hunt.
I think some in the community may not be aware that we already have shared services with both Waikato, local authority shared services, and Bay of Plenty. So we've got a Waikato LAS and a BOP LAS. For me, this is about following the information. Those have done, Waikato's way ahead of the research. So it's about, if they allow us, hitching our wagon to theirs for a period until such time as it either no longer suits us or we decide to move in a different direction. I have no problem with B because I think the community will say, but what next? This is actually what next. It explains to them that actually prior to this council making any decision that would affect something they hold dear, we would consult on it under that special consultative procedure. I think it's the flexibility showing that we move across boundaries. We've got 2 regional councils, we're probably quite unique in that, and it is our willingness to work with whoever has that information for the wider Bay of Plenty. And I think that the things for the community to understand, it's more about the delivery of the water, not so much where it's come from, its quality, who the ownership or of that, but actually about cutting costs and providing the most inexpensive way. And I think the Auckland example, when you see from $1.31 to $3.50 for provision of it, drop down to $1.30 for everybody. Now, if we could achieve those sort of cost savings across our region, whatever the figures are, then I think that's a really good goal.
Thank you. Councillor Kent, then Councillor Gould.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I still have a slight issue with the way this is being phrased in terms of putting the emphasis on the council-controlled organisation, which I think isn't the actual issue. The actual issue is we want to explore collaboration to see if it's actually feasible before we do so. So I would like to move an amendment to A, take out the words "the formation of a council-controlled organisation" in brackets CCO and replace it with "feasibility of shared services." To explore the feasibility of shared services.
Speak to that?
Yes, Your Worship.
There is no secret about Waikato already proposing a CCO. Our involvement and collaboration would be, what on earth does that mean to you? What is the impact on us? And do we want to be part of that, or do we want to alter their sort of approach? So you're saying the same thing.
Through you, Madam Chair, it's not quite the same thing, and if I can explain the reason why it's not quite the same thing, is I want to see whether it's actually feasible before I decide on the mechanism that we use to achieve it. And
Yeah.
I
That's
think
fair enough.
Yeah,
I'll take it.
yeah.
If I can, through you,
Yes,
Chair, if we're interested in working with the Waikato councils, they have already determined feasibility of a CCO. Right, if we want to go down the track of exploring shared services, then we go down the track of exploring shared services. We probably wouldn't be looking to engage with the Waikato because they are exploring CCO.
Because that serves their purpose,
That
but it
serves
may
their
not
purpose.
serve ours.
Well, that's why we would work with them to work that issue through. We're not saying into this mix that we would be part of a CCO. They have not yet even made a determination to form a CCO, but they are past the feasibility stage. All right? They have commissioned reports. They've spent reasonable sum of money in terms of getting a number of reports which recommend to them, as outlined in our report, that they further consider a CCO and work through what that would mean.
So are we going to... Did you want to move an amendment, or are you happy to leave it as it's
I'd still like to move the amendment and test it with our colleagues, please.
I'd just like to work on a bit of a refinement because I think we're getting there. I wonder if we're saying that we endorse staff working with potentially interested councils in the Waikato region to explore the formation of the feasibility of Rotorua Lakes Council being part of a council-controlled organisation, because that's what they've got. Well, they're not going to change their view for us.
No, they
Not at
won't.
all. So
They
we'll miss
won't.
out. We'll just miss out altogether if we don't want to go in there. So I think you're right about feasibility. You're wanting to know, is it feasible for us?
What's in it for us, for a start? Yes.
So put that word in there.
Perhaps, Jeff, you were wanting to elaborate further.
Thank you, Chair. Councillors, I think one of the things that you're not deciding here is to form a CCO. You're not doing that. What we're asking you is that would you support us talking to Hamilton about the work that they are currently got underway? And the work that they have currently got underway is the formation of a CCO. Now, all we're doing here is exploring whether or not there is value for the Rotorua area to be part of that. If there is no value, then fundamentally we won't go anywhere. If we come back to you, though, and say that there is significant value, and I think Councillor Hunt alluded to the reduction in the cost of water for Auckland, if there was that sort of value for Rotorua and you could retain control in the way that you wished, would you say no? So that's really what that's been put on the table today. The question is, do you support us exploring this opportunity with Hamilton? I don't think that we can say that we're going to explore the feasibility of a shared service, because that's not, as what's been said, that's not what they're exploring at the moment. So I think we need to be upfront with them when we're actually working with them about what we're exploring with them.
Endorses staff exploring the feasibility of shared services that may go into a CCO for the delivery of wastewater services for Rotorua Council. Well, that's what you got up there.
Wastewater. It's got water, wastewater. Wastewater.
That's what I said.
Yeah, water,
wastewater.
So I've got to put that amendment.
So what you want to do is
Point of order, Madam Chair. I have moved and has been seconded
yeah.
an amendment. Can we put the amendment to the vote, and that will probably...
Yes, we will. We will put the amendment to the vote. There has been an amendment which is clearly stated up there, and it's been... Oh, hello, what are we doing? Explore the formation of account... explore the feasibility of shared services, which is, that's correct, that's how you wanted it, yes. It's been moved by Councillor, there's amendment, it's moved by Councillor Kent, seconded by Councillor Sturt. All those in favour of the amendment, please say aye. Contrary? No. That's lost. Oh, no, I think that was quite clearly lost. Thank you. So we'll go back to the... Councillor Gould, you had a question there.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'm happy with recommendation as it's wording now, but I'd just like to point out that as long as we get a regular update from the staff, it may be a verbal, it may be an email, as long as we keep getting informed, I'm happy with that. But the key thing is the water and wastewater. That's going to be the key for this council in the future. It may be that the Waikato area come up with an answer to improve our lakes by mistake, or say we can do this to make our water in our 18 lakes better. You know, I'm all in favour of trying to work with another council to benefit the people of Rotorua.
Thank you, Councillor Gould. Can I just comment on a couple of the remarks that Councillor Wepper has made, and it is around the community's perception of water. And I think if we're talking about Waikato, you're talking about Tainui. If you're talking about Rotorua Lakes, you're talking about Te Aroha. And I'm not surprised that Waikato are further down the track on this, because water has been a significant issue there for quite some time. I don't know if they've consulted with Tainui. I have no idea, but I certainly know that at a meeting I attended recently in Hamilton, the whole 2 days was on water. And that was the iwi leaders group. So, you know, this is, yes, explore by all means, but it could well be, they could even be, Waikato could even be looking at something that might yet come unstuck. That was the tone of the meeting that I attended. So I'm just highlighting that. So thank you very much. Now we do have a mover and a seconder for 2. Thank you. Councillor Donaldson, move Councillor Donaldson, seconded Councillor Gould. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Contrary? Thank you. Thank you. Could I have a mover and a seconder, please, that we go into, move into the public excluded. Thank you, Councillor Sturt. It's been moved, Councillor Sturt, seconded Councillor Hunt. All those in favour that we move into excluded, please say aye. Aye. Thank you. We'll take a few moments. We're getting there. It's been a reasonably good meeting.